I think it's something that needs to be clarified worldwide around the many time zones, and I believe the 8.5-hour time zone difference to Kabul. What happens after August 31? And on tomorrow, is there like a date, a time, a moment, or not?
We don't know that exact moment where we'll finally get the U.S. military saying goodbye to the Kabul airport after 20 years. We did, Tom, have a final RAF flight out of Kabul back to the United Kingdom over the weekend. What happens next, we really don't know yet, and this is where the discussions are going to be focused on today. The United States is hosting a meeting virtually with NATO members. Also, Qatar and Turkey, Keeley will be there, and this is about the operation of the airport post-August 31st, because there's about 250 Americans or so, the State Department thinks, right now in Kabul. But what about those remaining Afghans? How are they going to get out after the U.S. military withdraws?
Ambassador Bolton is scheduled to be with us later this week. We're thrilled by that. And he is focused on Pakistan. Whenever I talk to you, Annmarie, nobody discusses the nation to the east. Is Pakistan part of the Biden discussion?
It's a very good question. This is something I hear a lot from former senior intelligence officials about what happens in terms of making sure the U.S. can keep an eye on Pakistan's very large nuclear arsenal. Also, the U.S. relationship with Pakistan. The President of the United States has yet to call Imran Khan since he's been elected. The U.S. has this very precarious situation with Pakistan. Following September 11th, those attacks in 2001 on the United States, Pakistan was probably the closest it's ever been to the United States. But after the capture and kill of Osama bin Laden, things got very difficult with Pakistan. And part of that is because he was, one, hiding in Pakistan, and where he was captured and killed was very close to a key Pakistani military base. So there's a lot of animosity between these two. They have to trust each other at some points due to security concerns, but at the same time, there's a lot of distrust between these two countries.
Meanwhile, as we approach the deadline for the U.S. removing troops and as the remaining U.S. citizens get out of that nation, the U.S. is saying that they are going to continue with drone strikes. The Taliban has condemned this. Where does the visibility come from as the U.S. continues with potential airstrikes?
Well, drone strikes, you don't exactly need boots on the ground per se. The strike that hit that car that the U.S. officials say it was carrying several suicide bombers came from our base in the United Arab Emirates. So you could do this all through bases in the region.
But Annmarie, forgive me. I mean, the point is, how do we know that those are people who are carrying
the operatives,
bombs?
the intelligence.
I mean, how do we even have that visibility into the machinations on the ground if we are coming at it with drones and it's harder to tell exactly who's planning what?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're probably going to have to rely on a lot of our partners, potentially, like I mentioned, Pakistani intelligence services, to understand where these people are. Also, the Taliban. If the Taliban does not want ISIS-K, which for the most part is an enemy of the Taliban, they could potentially cooperate with the United States in terms of where they have these breeding grounds for their militants and the likes.
Annmarie, that brings up a very good point. We are now partnering, I guess, with the Taliban, who I guess as of 2 weeks ago we were at war with. Do we trust them? Is there an incentive to continue to trust their intelligence?
It's a great question. I think the U.S. military at the moment thinks that what's happening at the airport, they can trust the Taliban. General McKenzie said that they believe that the Taliban and the security checkpoints have actually thwarted some attacks. But no one in Washington trusts the Taliban. And as you mentioned, Taylor, the Taliban was harboring al-Qaeda. They would not give them up. And this is why we went to a 20-year war in Afghanistan. There's also a statement over the weekend, the United States and 97 other countries, missing notably China and Russia. But this statement says that they will want to make sure these countries that Afghans can leave, civilians can leave after August 31st. And they have, quote, assurances from the Taliban. My question is, what are those assurances? And that's what a lot of people want to know.
Another question here from me. A lot of concern why Central Command hasn't told us who was killed in that air drone strike that you mentioned. Why aren't we confirming? Because there are reports that they were civilians and children.
Yeah, we're waiting for CENTCOM for that report. What you've said is reports on the ground is that there are Afghan civilians, including a few children that could have been casualties, potential deaths due to this drone strike. The CENTCOM has yet to affirm this. Remember, CENTCOM also, the Pentagon did say that there were 2 attacks at the Kabul airport, surrounding that airport on Thursday. There was only 1. So I think there's just a little bit of, they have to really brief through the information on the ground before they give us the final update.
Annmarie, there is a 4-star general with 3 years running the Central Command. His name is Austin, and I believe he's the Secretary of Defense. Has he been invisible?
He hasn't publicly been speaking, as you've seen from Jake Sullivan this weekend, or Secretary of State Antony Blinken, or General McKenzie at the Pentagon. But he has certainly been briefing the president, and that's what they're going to be convening with this morning. The president will be convening his national security team on what's going on in Afghanistan during these final hours. You guys make a great point. At what point does the U.S. say goodbye? It's, after 2:45 something p.m. in Kabul right now. Is it midnight Kabul time? Is it midnight in U.S. time? But then also, the president is going to also be speaking with his national security team on what's going on in Louisiana, because the U.S. is also facing mass destruction when it comes to the hurricane